Simply log on to channelstv.com, click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.
From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Nwawodo.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, President Bola Tinubu eyes foreign investments as he sets out to India for the G20 summit with some of his cabinet members and players in the private sector. Glorious days of stronger Naira will return. That's according to the General Overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Pastor Enoch Adeboye, during the church's monthly Thanksgiving service tagged Uncommon Miracles. It's a Black Sunday in Nnewi, Anambra State, after a builder and two of his sons died when a story building under construction came down. And airstrikes in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, kills at least 20 civilians as nearly 5 months of war continues. As President Bola Ahmed Tinubu prepares to leave for the G20 summit holding in New Delhi, India, he has his eyes set on foreign investors. A statement by the presidential spokesman, Ajuri Ngelale, says the president will use the opportunity of the summit to attract global capital and promote increased foreign direct investment in key labor-intensive sectors of Nigeria's economy for job creation and expansion. According to him, on the sidelines of the summit, the president will participate in and deliver a keynote address at both the Nigeria-India Presidential Roundtable and the Nigeria-India Business Conference. The statement further states that while Nigeria's membership of the G20 is desirable, the government has embarked on wide-ranging consultations with a view to ascertaining the benefits and the risks of membership, after which the government will decide whether or not to apply to join as appropriate. The president will be accompanied on this trip by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wali Edu, the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, and the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite. And still on the economy, the General Overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Pastor Enoch Adeboye, is optimistic that Nigeria and the Naira will rebound against the US dollar. Speaking while ministering during the church's monthly Thanksgiving service tagged Uncommon Miracles, Pastor Adeboye says the glorious days when the Naira competed favorably well against other currencies, especially the US dollar, will be back.
If you receive a miracle in the nick of time, you can't forget. You can't forget. How many of them can I talk about? I remind you of the time the convention was on, the crowd had already gathered, and we had trusted God and told everybody, come, God will feed you. And then all of a sudden, all money dried up. And nobody knew that there was no money left in my pocket. And then my wife came in the morning and said, darling, we will need 5,000 naira today. 5,000 naira of those days. So when the naira was stronger than the dollar. Don't worry, those days will return. Oh, I know you don't believe me. If the Lord I serve is still on his throne, those glorious days will return. Maybe when that happens, you will know that there is a God of miracles.
Meanwhile, the federal government has issued a 30-day ultimatum to illegal miners to join a cooperative or stop activities in the country. Speaking at the press conference in Abuja, the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Mr. Dele Alake, explained that all efforts to formalize unlicensed miners into cooperatives have proved abortive and promised to deploy the instrumentality of the law to the defaulters. He further states that the ministry will review all mining licenses in the country as part of its transformation agenda.
It is obvious that government strategy for the development of the sector has been driven by the accommodation and mainstreaming of artisanal miners. However, despite these generous and patriotic gestures, there exist still those who have defied all entreaties to join cooperatives and be formalized. They prefer to continue to operate as illegal miners. So therefore, for the last time, let me declare that the ministry is giving such persons 30 days grace to join a miners cooperative or find another vocation to do. On the expiration of the period, the full weight of the law will fall on anyone seen mining on a mining site without a determinable status. This message will be interpreted into Nigerian languages and broadcast on the radio to ensure no one is ignorant of this directive. From October this year, a rejuvenated security regime will become active in the solid mineral sector. This will include the mine police, which I mentioned earlier on, sourced from the Nigerian police and specially trained to detect illegal mining and apprehend offenders. The new Mine Surveillance Security Task Force will coordinate the mines police and proactively address high-risk incidences of breach of mining laws.
The decision of President Bola Tinubu to set up a ministry for the marine and blue economy has continued to draw mixed reactions from experts and even shareholders in the sector. While some see the creation of this ministry as a rare display of the federal government's urgent desire to breathe life and tap into economic development opportunities at the sea, others consider it as an added cost to the stretched economy. Our correspondent Benny Ark tells us more.
The United Nations specifies the blue economy as a range of economic activities related to the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods, and overall ocean health. It encompasses various sectors such as fisheries, aquaculture, renewable energy, tourism, biotechnology, and more. Nigeria has a shoreline of about 854 kilometers, which has been facing acute degradation due to coastal erosion, the actions and inactions of the residents of the contiguous states. Most of these residents on the nation's shoreline are involved in small-scale fishing, subsistent dredging for local constructions, waste disposal, and most notable is oil spillage, which is detrimental to marine resources and ecosystems, among others. Will the establishment of this ministry present any opportunities for the country to mainstream a mixed economic systems?
It is almost a $2 trillion economy in the world. Very, very massive, very massive. Now, we are challenged by short-term finances now. Now, what do you mean by short-term finances? You see, the resources are not there, and jobs are not there. 133 million people, multidimensionally poor. The blue economy is a huge source of job creation, economic regeneration. So if we go in that direction, it is very, very advantageous.
The blue economy is a concept that has gained prominence in the last decade and is said to be a $1.5 trillion industry. Its activities include maritime shipping, fishing and aquaculture, coastal tourism, renewable energy, water desalination, undersea cabling, seabed extractive industries, and deep-sea mining, marine genetic resources, and biotechnology.
We have almost 854 kilometers of shoreline, and you have almost 6 or 7 contiguous states. What is the policy? What is the policy to deal with the states, the national and sub-national government? So those are the. But essentially, how do you deal with the challenges of the ocean vis-a-vis what climate change has done to it, and the huge investment that will come there?
The Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, believes the creation of the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, if properly harnessed, has the potential to generate enormous revenue for the economy and create millions of jobs.
As you know, the blue economy is not only about the maritime. The oil and gas is there, the agriculture, the power, the environment, all the sectors will have to come together. So that is what the then Vice President was coordinating.
This is a $1.5 trillion industry, the blue economy, worldwide. Nigeria has not even begun to explore it. Yes, maritime transport were there, but fisheries and the aquatic environment were doing very little.
Experts say the potentials of the blue economy are immense. However, to actualize them, collaborative efforts with clear strategies should be developed with sustained commitment and political will to implement.
The new minister, with a new ministry and a chance for a fresh start, talk to industry, understand, and then you can find solutions and implement.
Now we have a standalone ministry. What do we expect? That we will have a number of policies, some legislation that will bring all the sectors together so that we can move forward. So the Honorable Minister, I think the first thing to do is to prioritize. We have to look at the sector, X-ray the sector, microscope the sector, and then understand the priorities.
The President Bola Tinubu has been commended for the foresight to look in this direction. But still, Nigerians believe that for the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy to make the desired impact on the economy, sincere attention and improvement in capital management and labor needs to be developed. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
The Edo State Independent Electoral Commission has declared the ruling People's Democratic Party winner of the chairmanship election in all the 18 local government areas of the state in what is seen as a landslide victory. The PDP, the All Progressives Congress, the APC and the Labour Party were the main political parties in that contest for the local government chairmanship, as well as councillors of all the wards. Meanwhile, Governor Godwin Obaseki has commended the citizens of the state for their peaceful conduct in the just concluded election.
We are democratically matured in this state. In terms of the way the elections were conducted, I was pleasantly surprised by the diligence of EDSEC. I went round, and the number of polling units I saw manned by EDSEC and the various electoral officers was quite impressive. I mean, across at least 3 metropolitan local governments, the turnout was fair, as expected, but we also showed that we can conduct elections without disrupting activities, people's economic and social activities. People voted and went about their various activities for the weekend. So overall, I believe that we have done well, and we have shown that it was free, it was fair, there was mass participation, and the dominance of PDP as a party in this state was clearly exhibited in the election. I've not seen an election that has not been challenged. In America, elections are challenged, and that's why provisions are made in the law and in the process for tribunals to review and adjudicate on the cases or complaints of contestants. So, but overall, I mean, you could see the evidence is very overwhelming. PDP campaigned. The campaign for this local government election as if it was a major national election. I went with them around the 18 local governments of the state. I know that there were campaigns. The councillors campaigned rigorously in the various wards, and I didn't see too much presence from the opposition. So I'm not surprised at all at the results we saw yesterday. But more importantly, it's the response of the people. There was no violence, and it was clear that the results reflected the wishes of the people.
In part two, after the break, with the president's eyes set on investors, Channels Television's data analyst Babajide Ogunsowo will examine what Nigeria stands to gain from the G20 summit. Please stay with us.
The Duchess International Hospital opened its doors in October 2021. The mission of the hospital is to reverse medical tourism. We take particular care here at the Duchess to bring together a combination of the brightest and the best locally, as well as Nigerians in the diaspora who are interested in returning to do very good work for the benefit of our patients here in this country.
The good thing is that we have all international expertise here, all international facilities here, international people working here. Everything is coming together in a space which was considered not great in terms of the availability of healthcare.
Axis Bank, of course, has been able to provide us with a robust range of products and services that has enabled us to deliver that standard and quality of healthcare that is integral to our mission as an organization.
Stubborn dark marks? Try new Nivea Lumina 630. Visibly reduces up to 10 years of stubborn dark marks in just 4 weeks. New Nivea Lumina 630. Get even and luminous skin.
My name is Olasoye Miracle, Programmer and Graduate of Industrial Maintenance Engineering.
I'm Elo Gene Opako Eunice, Creative Director of Elo Music Grandeur.
Rigel, Afrobeat artist.
Shani J, dance artist.
Last year, I took a shot at Stanbic IBTC Fuse Talent Competition and I won.
In the tech category.
The dance category.
So guys, if you know you got what it takes.
If you're a dancer,
hardware developer or an innovator,
you can take a shot, have a slice of 32 million naira.
Come to the Fuse Talent
TV realization. Let's go!
Well, if you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Bola Tinubu eyes foreign investments as he sets out to India for the G20 summit with some of his cabinet members and players in the private sector. Glorious days of stronger Naira will return, and that's according to the General Overseer of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Pastor Enoch Adeboye, during the church's monthly Thanksgiving service tagged Uncommon Miracles. It's a Black Sunday in Nnewi in Anambra State after a builder and 2 of his sons died when a story building under construction came down. And airstrikes on the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, kills at least 20 civilians as the nearly 5 months war continues. The 18th Heads of States and Government Summits of the Group of 20, that's the G20, will take place in New Delhi, India. Well, this week, the G20 will bring together the world's major and systematically important economies. Its members represent 85% of the global domestic product, that's the GDP. 75% of the international trade and even more than 60% of the world's population. But this edition will focus on the theme of the G20. It is one Earth, one family, one future. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu will be attending and has said that he has a goal of attracting more foreign investments to Nigeria. Well, tonight, Babajide Ogunsowo, the founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst, is here to share more insight about the opportunities for Nigeria at the G20 summit. Hello, Babajide.
Good evening, Anna.
Yes, so we know Nigeria is not a member of the G20, but how significant is this event for the country?
So first is how should we describe the G20? It's, picture a restaurant. It's what I would say the G20 is an economic buffet for friends. And because you will also have a lot of enemies at the G20, it's like an a la carte for enemies. So the G20 is a collection in a meeting where you will have lots of friends and indeed lots of enemies. For Nigeria, yes, we are not part of the G20. There's some good news and there's some bad news. And the good news is the G20 represents the world's financial cabal. In that group, you have the UK, United Kingdom, the United States. In that group, you have Japan, you have Saudi Arabia. They will be playing key roles at this summit in India. The bad news as well is you have those countries that they refer to, in other words, as enemies, also at the G20. China, Korea, Russia will also be at the G20. So in summary, Anne, if you followed the historic meeting of all the presidents that have been attending the G20 since 2008, one thing is guaranteed for Nigeria, which is also guaranteed for every country that attends the G20. You will make new friends, is guaranteed. You will also, because you've made new friends, you will make new enemies. So that sets the tone for what exactly Nigeria, what will happen to the president when he leaves the G20 in India. He will go with some old friends, but it's guaranteed that President Tinubu will leave with new friends and with new enemies. Let's take a look at why I talk about friends and enemies and the politics behind the G20. Yes, the G20, 19 countries, including the European Union, but here's why Africa's role is significant in some perspective and insignificant. If you take a look at what's in front of us, what you will notice is Africa is the continent that is least represented at the G20. Only South Africa, among all African countries, is represented at the G20. If you look at all the other continents, you see high concentration of countries and representation across it. And so the question is, how significant will be the discussions that Africa and the proposals that will be presented by Africa, taken by other nations, looking at our concentration and the perception of Africa in the G20. So the summary is, for Africa, what we say will be as important as what we choose not to say, because clearly from what we see, the distribution and the focus of the G20 over the years hasn't really been about equity or fairness, because if it's about equity or fairness, we will have seen more representation from African countries. What the G20 really is all about is how powerful are you?
But every year, I mean, we know the leadership of the G20 changes. This year, it's going on in India. What are the global priorities for India in all of this?
So, yes, India this year. Next year should be Brazil. And then from Brazil, we'll then see the next summit in 2025 will be in South Africa. But since it's India, the first is to look at what are the priorities for the G20 under India's leadership. And if we take a look at what India has said will be its top priorities, they are similar to the priorities of other previous years, again, just in different words. India has said green development, in simple terms, trying to lower carbon footprint. It's talked about improving climate finance and making sure lifestyle for the environment becomes one of its top priorities, priority one. India has also talked about ensuring that low-income countries and emerging economies have more opportunities for growth and also have more stakes at the discussion tables. Point 3, India has talked about accelerating the progress for sustainable development goals, again, because we know that the World Trade Organization will also be at this summit. We also know that the International Monetary Fund and all the other financial institutions will be at this summit. So sustaining SDG goals, important for the G20 under India. Clearly, the role of technology is a priority for India and digital public infrastructure. That's where we have the financial technology space and artificial intelligence coming up. So again, key priorities for India. And finally, the politics of it, improving multilateral institutions for the 21st century. So these are the priorities for India. These have also been the priorities of other countries that have hosted the G20, albeit put in other words. And so sometimes people talk about the G20 being a place where a lot happens, but nothing happens.
All right, but going to this summit, I mean, attracting more foreign direct investments is key to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's agenda, as he has said. What is the situation for foreign investment in Nigeria, and what countries up on top of their game talking about this type of thing?
So going into the summit, and I think the president has said it's clear his agenda will be attracting foreign direct investment. Should that be his agenda? I think yes. So I think on this, the president has gotten it right. Nigeria clearly needs more foreign direct investment. And because if you look at prior to this summit, a lot of people have referred to Nigeria as G0. And what do they mean by G0? And that's because people talk about Nigeria is the giant of Africa. However, Nigeria is in manufacturing. And I would like you to take a detailed example, listen to what I'm about to share with you. Last year, the National Bureau of Statistics released a report that showed that Nigeria exported 26 trillion naira. Now, 26 trillion naira sounds like a lot of money. However, less than 3% of this was manufactured goods. Less than 3% of Nigeria's exports, manufactured goods. But that isn't the bad news. The bad news is that less than half of these manufactured goods get outside Africa. In other words, the world is not feeling manufacturing coming from Nigeria. Manufacturing, again, I explained, accounts for less than 3% of Nigeria's total exports. And even though manufacturing accounts for less than 3% of total exports, majority of Nigeria's manufactured exports stays within Africa. And so those are the reasons why the world looks at the giant of Africa and says it is a sleeping giant. So what the president has said, is it the right thing? Yes, we need to attract more investments. Not only attract more investments, we need to attract more investments into Nigeria's manufacturing sector. Again, let's look at the numbers so that the president can have a clearer picture of the challenges and the opportunities. Excuse me. Since 2015, total capital imported into Nigeria, $89 billion. However, just about 10 countries accounts for 90% of all capital that comes into the country. The United Kingdom and the United States. Since 2015, they've accounted for approximately $50 billion worth of capital. Again, these are still the top 2 countries Nigeria gets its capital from. South Africa, Netherlands, Singapore, the UAE, Mauritius because of the safe haven for capital, Belgium, Switzerland, and France. The summary is President Tinubu going into the G20 summit has 2 options. Option 1, does it stick with these countries that have historically provided capital to Nigeria, the ones in front of us, United Kingdom, United States? Or does it go with new friends? Again, over time, what we have seen is the monies coming in from these historical countries have been insufficient to support Nigeria's manufacturing sector. Again, it has 2 options. Do we go with history, or we'd make new friends. In the final analysis, one thing is guaranteed. President Tinubu will leave G20 with new friends and new enemies. That is for certain.
All right, I guess that's a good place to end it. Babajide Ogunsowo, founder of Leadership by Data and Channels Television's data analyst, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you for it.
It's not so exciting in Anambra State. It's a Black Sunday in Ebu Umunenem and in Otolo Newi, in Newi North local government area of Anambra State, as a builder and his two sons lost their lives when a story building they were constructing collapsed on them in the early hours of today. While residents declined comments on this incident, the chairman of the Anambra State Council for Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, Mr. Victor Meju, who supervised the evacuation of the victims, said the incident is an unfortunate one as the late builder was not a certified engineer, while the materials used for the construction were all substandard.
We came to the scene and we discovered that there was a building collapsed that engulfed the acclaimed engineer and two of his children and one survivor. What we saw today is an eyesore as a complete derogation of the code of practice of engineering. We have witnessed from beginning to the end that there was a poor bearing capacity, poor concrete mixture. There was no material lab test. The physical planning board came here for inspections and they were driven away. There was no approval. It's very unfortunate that the man who claimed to be an engineer died in this scene. It's very unfortunate that the client is not even in town, it's not in the community. You know, it's very unfortunate because you cannot have this kind of gigantic building and it is given to a quack to build. The whole deadlocks of the buildings were resting on anything less than 12 mm. There was no concrete mixture, there was no design, there was no plan. This is the second time we're visiting this community and we're having the same scenario. The last was in Orifite and there was the same building collapse and we recorded death. Again, this is 2-3 persons dying in this scenario. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. We cannot longer condone this practice. That is why the Anambra State government teamed up with the current to say this is an end to this kind of menace.
The re-election bid of the Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma has received another boost with the support and the endorsement from youths from the 6 local government areas making up the Okigwe senatorial zone. At a town hall meeting held in Ehime Mbano local government area of Imo State, the youths say they are impressed with the performance of the governor in the last 43 months, and they are therefore throwing their weight behind his bid to return for another 4 years. Meanwhile, the National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, have also endorsed the governor for a second term.
The Imweze Community Hall is filled with youths from the 6 local government areas that make up Okigwe zone in Imo State, and they are here for a town hall meeting with leaders of the zone to discuss issues bordering on governance, security, and the forthcoming governorship election. One after the other, some of the leaders highlight the achievement of the Uzodinma-led administration in ensuring the growth and development of the youths in the zone.
The government of Imo State has realized that our youth need to key into digital economy. That is why the government created that Ministry for Digital Economy. We train our youth on various skills such as marketing, robotics, artificial intelligence, graphic design, marketing. All these skills, you can stay in your home and create wealth for yourself without opening a shop.
His Excellency, aside the Daniel Bagwe, next, no other governor here in Imo State. I think that man has done more than expected.
They then move a motion endorsing and supporting the governor for a second term.
I hereby on this day, 2nd September 2023, move a motion for the endorsement of His Excellency for him to be re-elected come 11/11/2023. I so move.
And away from the town hall meeting, members of the National Association of Nigerian Students, led by the national president, Mr. Umar Farouk, led hundreds of Nigerian students to the government house in Owerri, the Imo State capital, to show solidarity and support for the governor's re-election bid. According to Mr. Farouk, the governor has been a pillar of support to the association for a very long time.
Today is exactly 1 year ago that you stood with us, and we are here today to tell you that we are with you. We direct the structures not only to vote for you, but to defend that vote. And for us as students, we can say, sit down, we will deliver you by God's grace.
Governor Zadima believes reward for hard work is more work. He promises to continue to meet the expectation of Nigerian students while urging them to continue to support his administration at the state level and that of President Bola Tinubu.
I will continue to support you, and I will continue to encourage you, and I will do my best and ensure inclusivity of the young youth population into my government. And so shall federal government of Nigeria also continue to do.
Is bestowed with the honor of a life patron of the National Association of Nigerian Students. The APC in Imo State believes the numerous endorsements and support garnered by the governor ahead of the election is a pointer that the APC remains a party to beat in the November 11 governorship election.
The do-or-die mentality among some members of the political class is because they see politics as the only means of survival. Well, that's according to the former federal lawmaker who represented Kano South Senatorial District in the 9th Senate, Senator Kabiru Gaya. He told Channels Television's Neo Taigbe on our current affairs program Newsnight that the demand by some electorates for sundry favors also stroke election corruption among the politicians.
When you have a professional politician who doesn't have a profession but politics, then that's why you have a problem. Because in one case, it's do or die matter. That is the job he has to survive as a politician, whether he kills to win or whatever he does, whether he tastes corrupt, whether he becomes so corrupt to remain back in that office because he's a professional politician. And that's why we have the problem. So most of those people, and unfortunately Nigerians do help the people working in government to be corrupt. I can give you an example, yes. When they appoint a permanent secretary, not talking of minister also, or a minister, his people from his community will come to celebrate in Abuja that the man of the town or the village or the relation has become a permanent secretary or a minister. Somebody will throw party for him more than the salary of the minister or the permanent secretary. And then the permanent secretary will be very happy that people have brought him donations, gifts, and so on. That is corruption. If the person that sponsored him for his own party, that he became a minister, tomorrow he will be in the minister's office for a job. And if he's not a good contractor, the minister will have to find a way in cutting corners to give that man. And that's corruption.
But are there no rules against all of this?
If there are rules, it's because most of us, you break the rules. Even from the grassroots. Like a politician who wants to vote for us, you carry leaves and put on his head. Say he's for sale. He's selling his conscience. Give him 5,000, 1,000. He go and vote for you. And for you putting that money for him to vote for you, it means you are investing money.
For the full interview with Senator Gaya, please watch Newsnight tomorrow, Monday, September the 3rd, 2023, at 9 p.m. right here on Channels Television. September the 4th. The Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has flagged off the distribution of food palliative for vulnerable residents in the state. Governor Sanwo-Olu, who kicked off the exercise at Lagos House at Lausa Ikeja, says this initiative will cater for 500,000 households, over 2,500 micro, small and medium enterprises involved in bag manufacturing, food aggregation, packaging and logistics. Over 25,000 employees of the MSMEs will also be indirectly impacted.
It's the flag-off ceremony of the Lagos State Food Palliatives Program, and the venue is the Lagos House, Ikeja. Representatives of different groups, including the NUT, the NLC, PLWDS, NUJ, religious groups are here for the symbolic handing over. Governor Sanwo-Olu joins the gathering, inspects the items, some already packed in boxes containing 10 kilograms of rice, 5 kilograms of beans, and 5 kilograms of gari. He says the food bank program is targeted at 500,000 households and over 2,500 micro, small, and medium enterprises, among others.
This is direct intervention to the citizens. It has nothing to do with public service or if you are in arm of government or not. No, these are interventions to the entire citizens of Lagos State. The strategic goal of this program is to reach about 500,000 vulnerable households in the state with stable food items, which include two categories: bulk food items, which will be given some bulk distribution of 50 kg rice, 50 kg gari, and 100 kg beans for groups with over 2,500 micro, small, and medium enterprises, which are involved in bag manufacturing, food aggregation, packaging, while over 25,000 MSMEs also will be directly impacted.
Some of the beneficiaries who received their package commend the state government for the support.
I will commend the governor on this because it's only somebody that have empathy, somebody that have the mind of the people that will do this.
We'll make sure that it gets to the real people for which it was meant, because we know people are vulnerable and they need this thing.
The Lagos State government says a monitoring committee will be set up to supervise the distribution process, which will be carried out in phases across the 5 Ibile divisions of Lagos Island, Ikeja, Badagry, Ekpe, and Ikorodu.
Thank you very much.
Barring any unforeseen incidents, the Port Harcourt refinery will be back to production in December this year. It is expected to process 60,000 barrels of crude per day. This latest assurance is coming from the top management of the NNPCL, led by the GCEO, Malam Mele Kyari. In this special report, our energy correspondent, Olu Phillips, who's been monitoring the rehabilitation works at the refinery, tells us more on efforts being made by the NNPC management to ensure that the deadline is met.
In 1965, the Port Harcourt Refinery 1 was commissioned. By 1972, 7 years after, it was debottlenecked from the initial 35,000 barrels per day capacity to 60,000 barrels per day production capacity. By industry standards and international practice, a refinery like this should undergo turnaround maintenance every 2 years. In 1989, an additional refinery was commissioned on this complex, known as the Port Harcourt 2, with a 150,000 barrels refining capacity by the then military head of state, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. Together, this complex has a 210,000 crude refining capacity. Sadly, between 1989 till date, it witnessed only 3 turnaround maintenance, skipping several years. By 2019, owing to suboptimal performance of just 20%, the plant took its last breath. The dark clouds, however, appear to be shifting for some indications of brighter days ahead. Signs and sounds of work returning to the refinery greets our ears as Channels Television's crew approach the plant.
Okay, this area is a crude distillation unit, Unit 10.
10-inch line that brings raw crude oil to either 5 process comes in here. If you trace the line, it comes all the way from the battery limits into this point, and this is called the crude charge pump. It's a brand new pump to enable seamless production as we come up in December.
Okay, workers here are seen fabricating pipes. Others are making connections. But to get a better sense of what is now termed the full rehabilitation of the Port Harcourt refinery, our cameras toured the plant. It captures footage of newly installed pumps replacing the old. Welding works intensified to meet what is now a December deadline. This process, with a specialized machine, is known as the blasting and painting. All the pipes, hundreds and hundreds of them on this plant, will be treated, blasted and painted for anti-corrosion, while others will be replaced completely. The control room for the refinery isn't left out of the rehab process. It's been installed with new equipment to allow for full automation. To ensure there's no stoppage, the warehouse is loaded with replacement equipment, gadgets, and materials. Some that can survive exposure are kept out on the field waiting to be deployed. We cornered the man whose shoulder all of this lies on here on the complex, and he tells us more on the advancements with dinks of high optimism.
When the old Port Harcourt refinery comes on stream in December 2023, we're going to be sure we're going to get products out of it. We're going to get PMS, premium motor spirit. We're going to get kerosene. We're going to get automotive gas oil, AGO. We're going to get LPFO, which is for industries, heavy industry use. We're going to get all those products.
Of particular interest is how and why this rehabilitation timeline appears fully on course, especially the funding mechanism.
This refinery, when we bring it back, we're going to ensure that it runs at a minimum capacity utilization of 90% to be sure that we're able to pay back these loans, because we're using a loan to repay it. We have the governance to ensure that it is done to standard, so that when the plant comes up, it's going to run safely, it's going to run reliably, sustainably, and profitably.
Prior to this moment, an integrity test has been conducted at the instance of the EPC company Technimont and approved by the STECO and the NMPC's management, led by the GCO Malambele Kiari. The result meant that all units of the refinery components and operations had to be rehabilitated. Back on the plant, this is an FCC cyclone to be used for the fluid catalytic cracking unit. Don't panic, let me explain. The FCC is regarded as the money spinner of the refinery where PMS is produced. So this brand new 70 tons equipment known as the Cyclone will be lifted by a heavy crane that has a long boom into the FCC reactor by cutting the top of the FCC and replacing the old with this new one. The FCC will be up and running when this unit is installed. So PMS will be produced from here. So there you have it. By December 2023, this year, this plant, the Port Harcourt refinery, one, a 60,000 barrels capacity, has a date with history. It's barely a few months to that time. Will it come to life? That's the big question. From Port Harcourt refinery here in LMA, Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
From Port Harcourt, we come back to Lagos, where in a bid to ease transportation system in the state, the Lagos state government will officially commence commercial activities on the Blue Line Rail tomorrow, and that's Monday, September the 4th. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu will lead other state officials at that launch. Let's head to Bauchi State now, where the police command has rescued 16 victims from the kidnappers' enclave following a gun battle with bandits in Bura Forest and Ningi local government area of the state. The force public relations officer, Ahmed Wakili, states that this is in a press release, explains the operation was carried out by a joint team of the police, the military and other security outfits, which saw several bandits neutralized while others escaped with bullet wounds. Mr. Wakili says the gun battle lasted for 2 hours, which also led to 6 victims being injured in the process. They are now receiving treatment at the General Hospital in Bura. The police has asked members of the public to report any suspicious person seen with bullet wounds. From Bauchi State to Kaduna State, where the government has recruited 7,000 youths to the state's vigilance service to complement the efforts of the federal security agencies in tackling insecurity in the state. At the commencement of the training of the newly recruited vigilante members, Governor Obasani says his administration will do everything possible to curb the menace of banditry, kidnapping and other crimes in the state, threatening the peace and security of residents.
Thousands of young men and women drawn from the 23 local government areas of Kaduna State converged on the police college in the state capital. The new recruits who were selected from their respective communities after a careful integrity test are here to undergo training preparatory to their enlistment into the Kaduna State Vigilante Service. For a state that has been grappling with insecurity orchestrated by bandits and kidnappers, the presence of the governor, Senator Obasani, at the training ground underscores the importance his administration attaches to the security of lives and properties of residents of Kaduna.
We are highly delighted and we wish to applaud you in this giant stride you are taking. I think this is a laudable effort in view of the numerous security challenges not only in Kaduna State and across Nigeria but the whole globe.
The recruitment and screening of the trainees was in collaboration with critical stakeholders, including local government chairmen, traditional and religious leaders. Governor Sani believes this initiative, apart from being a major step towards restoring security and development in Kaduna State, will also provide jobs for the youths.
The commencement of this training is a major step toward fulfilling our promise to the good people of Kaduna State. In our administration's blueprint, we are committed to strengthening the manpower and overall operational capacity of CADVIS. I must, however, warn that when you are eventually enlisted into the service and you start carrying out your duties, you must desist from violating the rights of the citizens. CADVIS was set up to protect the people, not to violate their rights.
This personnel injected will definitely improve the security situation in our dear state, Kaduna State.
Faced with the challenge of inadequate personnel to successfully wage the battle against bandits and other criminal elements in the communities, the Kaduna State government remains optimistic that the recruitment of these able-bodied men and women into the State Vigilance Service will assist the conventional security agencies with actionable intelligence due to their knowledge of the local environment.
Despite promises by previous ministers to develop sports in Nigeria, the country is still faced with challenges of infrastructure, poor athletes' welfare, and inadequate preparations for international competitions. But this report takes a look at expectations for sports development under this new administration.
New minister, and it's another round of inspection tour of the MKO Abiola Stadium in Abuja, the National Stadium in Lagos, and games villages in both the FCT and Lagos, showing there's still a lot to be done for the development of sports in the country. The facilities are in a deplorable state in spite of attempts by previous ministers to revive them. To address these concerns, the Minister of Sports, Mr. John Owayano, is meeting with men and women who've made their mark in sports in Nigeria, some media executives, sports editors and enthusiasts to brainstorm and possibly forge a way forward. Without mincing words, they tell the minister the challenges in the industry and why it needs urgent attention.
The Global Sports Report, published only in April this year, tells that in 2022, this industry globally was worth $486 billion. This year, $512 billion. And in the next 3 years, will be worth $623 billion. And then you sit back and say, the young men you see on the streets wasted, muscles everywhere. Can't we get them to do things?
There was a time when you had 8 men at the starting blocks of the 100 meters final, either at the World Championships or the Olympic Games, and you will find 2 Nigerians at the starting block. And you are talking about 8 of the best runners in the whole world. And if you also switch over to the women's side, find Yuri Onyale at the starting block. 100 meters, 200 meters, Vanilla to Bukoya 400 meters, and so on and so forth. Where did all that go?
Now that the problems have been identified, what plans does the minister have to resolve it?
There is a funding problem, finance. There is a trust problem, trust. There is a facility problem. And these 3 are all interrelated. 2 and 3, trust, facility, are tied up to what? Funding. Then if you solve 2, trust, you can unleash what? The other 2. That's what it is.
At this gathering, a key counsel given to the minister is that solving the problems of sports development requires long-term commitments, collaboration and a shared vision among stakeholders. The minister knows there's a lot of work to be done and the time to start is now.
To the EPL now, Arsenal struck twice in injury time to stun Manchester United with a 3-1 win at the Emirates in a Super Sunday clash in the English Premier League. Marcus Rashford hammered in United's opener with their first meaningful attack. That's before Arsenal's Martin Odegaard swept in the first-time effort. Declan Rice smashed the ball past Andre Onana in injury time, and that's before Gabriel Jesus added a third. Liverpool looks like the dominant Jurgen Klopp side of old as the 3-0 win over Aston Villa at Anfield. Outside our shores, at least 20 people have been killed after an army airstrike in the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. Activists are saying that many victims of that attack are in the Kalakala Al-Kuba neighborhood, which is southwest of the city. The army and paramilitary rapid support forces have been fighting for the control of Khartoum since April, and hundreds of people have been killed. Spain's weather service has predicted heavy rains today, forcing authorities to shut down train lines, cancel the Spanish League soccer game, and ordered citizens to stay at home. The warning covers Madrid and the surrounding areas, and the extreme weather has been attributed to Storm Dana, which is expected to make landfall in the Spanish capital. Weather concerns have been raised since Saturday when torrential rains dumped about 215 litres of rainfall in Tarragona region.
Floods in Alcana, Tarragona on Spain's east coast confined residents to their homes after more than 200 litres per square metre of rain fell in the past 24 hours. The local government advised residents to avoid unnecessary trips as massive floodwaters could be seen rushing towards the shore on Sunday. Residents woke up to clean mud and debris after having to rescue some of their neighbours overnight. Torrential rain swept across the country on Sunday, leaving some roads flooded in the city of Toledo. The National Weather Agency, EMET, issued a maximum red alert, which means possible extreme danger in the Madrid region, Toledo province, and the city of Cadiz. The city's mayor advised residents to stay at home, while emergency services sent texts to residents warning them of flood risks and advising them not to use vehicles. Heavy rains and storms left flooding across North and West Spain on Saturday after a series of heat waves roasted the country throughout the summer. After the high temperatures of August, the country suffered torrential downpours. The Spanish Weather Agency expects will persist until Monday, September 4th.
And the main news again. President Bola Tinubu will be eyeing foreign investments as he jets out for India on Monday for the G20 summit. And we also brought you a special report on the rehabilitation of Port Harcourt 1 refinery, which is built to resume operations in December. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Have a wonderful week.
The literary world celebrates Nigerian-Canadian poet Nduka Otiono. He's won the prestigious Best Book of the Year award from the African Literature Association. Our special report delves deep into the literary world as we discover what makes Africa's promising creative writers tick. And we take a look at some of Nigeria's exceptional authors whose pieces are catching global attention. Welcome to Diaspora Network, where we celebrate Nigeria's excellence on the world stage. I'm Ijeoma Onyato. Let's kick off the show with a look at the news this week.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has expressed his condolences following the death of Nigeria's ambassador to France, Kayode Laro. The late Honorable Ambassador was praised for his dedication to human capital development in Nigeria, and in particular, Kwara State, where he's from. During his career in the Nigerian Foreign Service, spanning 35 years, Mr. Laro